In this video, I'm going to talk about why most relationships fail. And it's not the reason you think. Mostly, it's because of unmet expectations. But even deeper than that, there are some other concerning things that are happening that you can get ahead of and prevent so that you never have to worry about your relationship ending. The reason why most relationships fail is because, one, they're just not a good match. Most people don't actually marry the person they should marry. They marry the person who's convenient. It is notorious for women to marry a guy who is just a security blanket. In other words, he's not the guy she really wanted, he's the guy that was available. Maybe her biological clock was ticking. Maybe things were happening in her life where she's like, I have the pressure to get married and I want to have these things. I want to have the house, I want to have the kid, I want to be a wife, or I want to be a mother or something. And so she gets pressed to do these things in her life, and society tells her, hey, you should get married. And so she'll marry a guy, not necessarily the guy that she really wants, but she'll marry the guy that's available and who's willing to marry her. And he's all in with her, but she's not all in with him. Or maybe really the guy doesn't have a lot of options with women. So he ends up just dating the women that just show interest to him. And so in this place, the guy's like, well, she likes me and she sleeps with me, so I can make this work. I'll see if I can make this work. You know what? I'll make it my mission to make this work. If you're this kind of guy where you're like, I'm going to make it my mission to make this work, you're probably in a situation where you're not even with a woman who has high compatibility. She's not everything he wants, but she hits most of the things, which we call the 80% girl. And if they're following the 6 metrics of compatibility, which I'll talk about in another video, then you'll know that this is the woman who's all in for you. But if you're not with somebody you really want, if you're not with somebody who really matches you well, the problem is you're always going to be thinking in the back of your mind, I wish I had that. And then when that presents itself to you, maybe it's a coworker, or maybe your wife has a coworker, or somebody else presents themselves in your life who has that one thing that you've been craving in your relationship, you're going to be like a guy in the desert thirsting for water. And even though that thing might not be that big a deal, it will be to you. And you'll go out of integrity to get that need met. And so this is what we have to remember. If you don't find somebody you're really highly compatible with, you're going to be tempted later on if somebody else comes into your world. And you'll always be dissatisfied and always wonder, what if? And because of this, most people ignore red flags. They don't have abundance in dating options because they don't value themselves. And because they don't value themselves, they don't hold their partners to a standard. They don't hold them to say, hey, I need you to communicate with me. I need you to treat me with respect. I need you to be present. I need you to be empathetic. I need you to desire me. I want to feel wanted with you. And in this place, they ignore red flags. He might say, she has a lot of guy friends, but that's totally fine because I'm not the jealous type. He ignores the fact that she can't have girlfriends. He ignores the fact that if she's mean to the waitress, she'll probably be mean to him. If in the beginning of a relationship, she's not that nice to you, that's probably going to get worse once she gets accustomed to you. Once she realizes what your boundaries are and she realizes when she feels safe with you, she doesn't have to be that way. She doesn't have to put on a mask. She doesn't have to put on a front. And so the next one is that a lot of people just don't take accountability. They don't take accountability for what they do wrong. They try to deflect. They try to shame their partner. They try to guilt their partner. They try to bring up other things other than the issue at hand. Your relationship will never survive if neither one of you take accountability or if even just one of you does. Both of you need to take accountability. If you have one person trying to make the relationship work and the other one's just kind of riding along, then it's like being in a boat with one paddle. You're just going to be going in circles and you're going to be wondering, why can't we go anywhere? Well, the other person's not holding their weight. Toxic behavior is anything like manipulation, guilt, shame, interrogation, intimidation, trying to see what you can get away with just to get away with it, any types of power or control over the other person. You know you shouldn't do that because it hurts them, and yet you're going to see if you can get away with it. And so this kind of toxic behavior will always ruin the relationship. If you can manipulate them, you're not going to really like them that much. And it goes the same for your woman. If she can manipulate you, then that means that she feels more power over you. And a woman who feels more powerful than you can never find you attractive and want to have sex with you. So it turns her off because she needs a strong present guy in her life, a guy who can actually lead her, who can actually run the relationship in a certain way. Not dominating or domineering, but in a way, show us, lead us to where we're going to go. And so if you're in a situation where you're being belittled, you're being manipulated, and this toxic behavior is happening, it's never going to work. If you're having a partner who's cheating on you, it's not going to work. If you're having a partner who is having an addiction, it's not going to work. If your partner is abusive to you, it's not going to work. Because these situations propagate those type of things. If you're in a relationship with somebody who's addicted to something, and you just stay there and you keep allowing this to happen in your life, you become an enabler. And it's the same thing with abuse. If you're sticking around a situation where you're being emotionally or physically abused, or even financially abused, and you stay, you're enabling the bad behavior, so you can't be the solution. And if you're in a situation where you're being manipulated, then you keep allowing this, you can't be the solution. And this leads to lack of empathy. Most people who are in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship or one that's fallen apart, usually there's a lack of empathy on one or two parts. And that lack of empathy means that the other person doesn't really care to try to change things for you. It's all about them. It's all about their needs, about their wants, about how life is falling apart, how they always need help, about how they're emotionally not there, about how they're depressed and how they can't go to the gym and how they can't get a job and how they can't do this. And it's always this victim game. And before you realize it, your life's revolved around all of her victim. And it's like, how are you going to have a relationship with somebody where everything's just about them and we can't even just get off the ground because of all her problems? You can't have a relationship like that because it's completely one-sided. It's all about her and all of the things she can't do and what she needs help with. And so you come in there as a white knight trying to fix everything, but you forget that soldiers are disposable. That's why they're sent into combat, to be killed. They're disposable. And so she starts to see you as a resource who is disposable. You keep thinking, hey, I'm going to be this white knight and save her. But the problem is you should be treating yourself like a king and not be putting up with that. No, you aren't disposable, and you require somebody who can match you at your level. And the most notorious of things that will make a relationship fall apart is just lack of presence. Just not being present. Most relationships get to this point where the person's just not present. You kind of get complacent. You know that they're just going to be there no matter what. I don't have to pay attention to her. I don't have to pay attention to the kids. I can just do what I want and they'll just handle business. And maybe you're the guy who's paying all the attention. She's not paying attention to you. She stops cleaning the house. She stops having sex with you. She stops taking care of the kids, and she puts them in front of screens just because you don't want to be bothered with it anymore. So just not being present is what causes a lot of disasters in most relationships. And this is the silent killer because it doesn't seem like anything's wrong. Everybody's doing fine. Everybody's cool, but nobody's present, which means that intimacy and connection starts to dissolve slowly over time. Before you know it, you're in this place where you don't even know who your wife is anymore. Your roommate's in this place, and you go and you want to approach her for intimacy. You're like, hey, why aren't we intimate? And she's like, I don't know. I don't really feel it right now. And you're like, yeah, I don't really feel it either. Why? Because you don't connect. There's no connection. There's no presence. And so not having that daily presence will erode the relationship over time. And sometimes it'll be completely unrecoverable. All right, brother, this is the reason why most relationships fail. This is all preventable. All preventable by you getting clear on what it is you want and what you need and bringing that to the table and unapologetically presenting it as an offer to who you want to date. In other words, if I'm on a date with a woman and she's got her phone out all the time, and say, hey, why don't we just make this about us and not everybody else in the world? Or if you're in a relationship with your wife and she's always on her phone all the time, you might say the same thing, like, hey, let's just be present together right now. And so being present is usually the solution to most of these problems. So if you're in any of these situations like addiction, abuse, or infidelity, relationship probably isn't going to last anyway. So brother, if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more of these in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. And I'll see you in the next one.